December the 9th, 2020. Guys, let me know if you're getting audio. And this is kind of a slightly new system. I don't do a lot of live videos because of we have a very weak internet system here, and a lot of times you'll get a lot of dropout. Now we've improved it somewhat, upgraded the available internet. Was finally able to upgrade. You got good audio? Great, guys. Now, what we're going to do today, and let me explain this. We've got an impact time of 2 hours from now, and that's on a model. And I think I mentioned in the video that you have a plus or minus 7 hours on that window of accuracy because it is a model. And if you think about the distance that's traveling is 93 million miles from the sun to the surface of our planet. And to be within 7 hours either way is pretty good accuracy. So what we're going to do, we're going to run for a couple of hours here, and I'm going to go through and hopefully show you guys how to do this yourself. I remember back during the Fukushima earthquake, we tracked CME coming from some very strong solar flares. And as Japan was turning earth facing or sun facing the way that we will be today and now, the earthquake struck. Now, none of the scientists would agree with that. But since then, guys, we've watched a lot of, especially during solar maximum, we watched a lot of these flares coming in and CMEs coming in, and major quakes happen. And there's ways to watch for that, even though not many people, there's more and more now that are doing it, using this to predict impacts. Now, all earthquakes are not caused by coronal mass ejections, but a lot of the strong ones are. So that's what I want to go through that. And I'm going to just go through some links. But if you notice, and if you can see at the bottom of the screen, all the links I'm going to use are at our website. So what I want to do first, and just be patient with me because, again, there's nobody, I don't have a editor or producer here. And so I want to be able to do this right. And let's see what we got here. Now, maybe that's pulled up where you can see it. And what we've got here is called the real-time solar wind. And it's a chart. You got your magnetics here. But the ones that we're going to be watching are the ones that are at the bottom. The orange is your density or proton density that's involved in this coronal mass ejection that's coming at us. The bottom is the wind speed, the actual speed of it. And we're starting to see an uptick now in this particular chart. See this right here? We've gone from about 350 to we're getting over 400 kilometers per second. And so we're over 80,000 miles an hour. But this is predicted to go up to 1.7 miles per hour according to the models, which would give us a very powerful impact with our shields week. Now, I'm not predicting anything. I'm going to show you what we've done during Grand Solar Maximum and track this. And so this link, if you go to our website, you can go to this page, which is called Solar Ham. Now, let me do something really quick. Now, what I want to do is, if any of these links are on our website. So as we go through it, remember, if you go to bpearthwatch.com, the column down through the left will have space weather, solar ham, the CME trackers, and we're going to also watch the Magnetopause, which is a basically early warning system, and it shows what's happening to our shields on the planet. So let's go to, let me see if I can get this to come in here. here. Now, I'm going to try to get this larger, get it up. That's as large as I can get it, guys. But what we're looking at is Solar Ham, and solarham.com, I think it is, but it's linked on the website. Gives you a lot of information. Right here, it's saying stay tuned to Solar Ham, but what it's going to go is it goes through this ticker. They're looking for geomagnetic storms today, and I've already noticed in the comments that a lot of people are feeling it. And every time we do this, the same thing. Geomagnetic storm warning is in effect beginning on Wednesday. Could go from a G1, which is strong, to a G3, and that's what they're talking about, the possibilities. Now, if we go in, I'm going to go back and look at the solar wind now because that's a live piece of information. But if you scroll down on Solar Ham, there's a lot of other information, including the solar wind speed. So I want to go back to that and let's check it. Now, guys, what you're looking at here, let me pull this in. Just bear with me here. Okay, now we're starting to see the solar wind speed increase. Now, it's predicted to be coming in as far as the center of the modeling in 2 hours at 12 noon Central. That would be 1 p.m. on the East Coast, and you can track it over depending on your time zone. Now, but it's supposed to get much higher than this, up to 800 kilometers per second. Again, 1.7 million miles an hour. It may get a little stronger. And usually you'll see some peaks in that. And what happens when that strikes the shields of our planet, along with the density and the protons that's in the orange chart right above there, it compresses things. And we have pressure on our tectonic plates, and you can see earthquakes from that. I'm not predicting any quakes because we're in kind of a new science. We've got technology we didn't have 12 years ago when we were at this point in solar cycle 24. And our shields were not as weak as they are now. So we have to watch any of these events. And I've seen some confusion as people talk about, well, what size was the flare? Now, it was a pretty strong flare. It wasn't an X flare. It was in the C5.7 range. But that does not determine the size of the coronal mass ejection that we're watching now. That it depends on a lot of things. The location of solar flare, was there filaments rising in that area? And we saw a hydro flare at the same time. But this chart shows a couple of interesting things. In the purple line right here, guys, this is representing the 7th, then the 8th, and now we're into the 9th. It's 3-day segments. So let me pull this back up, and I'm going to go back over there. I'm going to move the chart, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is a 3-day chart. If you notice the timestamp here at the top, it's the 6th. Then here we are on the 7th, and let's go to about 1600 hours when that the solar flare erupted and threw this coronal mass ejection towards us. Notice the solar wind speed right here. It peaked suddenly up into the 495 kilometers per second. Guys, that's very powerful, especially with weak shields. But what happened? And then that was on the 7th. You have what's called a proton or photon burst because of the flare. That takes 8.2 minutes to reach our planet. That's why you see the timing right here as it crossed this satellite on the way to the planet. Remember, it ionized some of the upper layers of our atmosphere, and you had radio blackouts, things like that. And that's what happens. And you feel it in your bones. And there's several ailments that can occur from this: headaches, dizziness, weakness. Most of you that experience it, you probably studied about that. But anyway, here was the initial pulse, and that was a photon burst, and it increased the solar wind speed as that was carried forward. Then it goes back down to normal, which the average is 300 to 350 kilometers per second. And then we're starting to see it rise again. Now, if you look, and we will go back to that model where it shows very steep impacts. And what I've noticed over the years, if you have a slow increase in solar wind speed, you don't have that impact on our tectonic plates as strong. But when you have a wall there, like it just hit a brick wall and shot straight up, that's when we see the most problems. And we'll keep an eye on that too. By the way, earthquakes from the national, from the earthquake folks here in the U.S., that's the top link uh, on our website, USGS, right there. It says earthquakes. But we're starting to see that rise now, and it's supposed to double what we're seeing in solar wind speed. And because of the width of this CME, it's going to hang with us a little bit, and we're going to go through a day of elevated wind speed after the initial wave passes. Let's take a look at some of the other information. Now, this is real time in the sense that it's not a model, and what you're looking at is the shields around our planet. A lot of you have seen this before, but I want to explain it. And right in the center of this, where you have a circle that's half white and half dark, that is our planet. The white side indicates the direction of the sun, daylight. Then you have in the dotted lines a series of satellites, our early warning system. You've got the GOES 14 and the 13 and the South Korean communications satellite. And there you can see possibly if you enlarge a screen, they're indicated by a diamond and an X and things like that. And so the sun is to the right of the image. And what you're seeing in this white line is representative of our shields, and you're seeing pressure coming from the sun. You're starting to get a double line here, and this is the burn off. And there's supposed to be, guys, depending on where you're at, some pretty good auroras on the other side of the earth as this thing comes in where it's night. And possibly into tonight, you may see some up in the south of Canada in some places. But what also, at the bottom, you have a series of numbers, and this is the standoff point. Average is 12. Right now, we're at about 9, but 12 is like a calm day in space weather. It'll be the shields will be setting out that far. But as the pressure from the sun comes in, you'll see this bend more and more. Now, I'm going to play part of this through. And this is going back a couple of hours. But what you're seeing is that actual bending of the white lines or the shield, and as you see the red and yellows increase, those are waves of energy coming from the sun. Solar wind's increasing, proton density is increasing, and that's where you see the density line just above the solar wind line. So we can see this push all the way in past that satellite band. Seen it before. We saw it also when CERN was up, which it's not right now, and bend it in all the way down almost to the planet itself on both ends. And what in the videos then, all of those were taken down. CERN's power, because of what's called ground current, and they were underground in this huge collider. They could they would sense that energy in those ground currents, and you would see CERN's power start to peak. It's amazing. They watched this too. They knew when they could get that extra energy. And so this is what we're looking at. And as you see this bend and move back and forth, that's pressure on the tectonic plates of our planet. Now, I want to look at a couple other things. Guys, just again, I have to change everything on the fly here. Just bear with me. We'll get there. Pull up the USGS information. And this is what we got. We're looking at the U.S. now. Nothing major. Someone mentioned that we had this quake up in Maine earlier, and it is. They listed that, I think, a 3.0. Now, that's not a strong quake, but it's in an unusual area. The strongest quakes on the map are up at the very western tip of the Aleutian Islands, 5.3. Down in Mexico, you've got a 5.4, 10 kilometers south of Salina Cruz, Mexico, and a few quakes across the country, 3.7 in Utah, uh, up in the 3.2 South Dakota. Now, when you see these in Kansas, a lot of times there's pressure south of here, and you'll see some in Oklahoma. And a lot of the Oklahoma quakes that you see will be at 5 kilometers depth, and that's telling you got fracking going on. But and again, I just want to point out kind of where we're at right now with the quake situation. Then that will, as you see that solar wind increase, you're going to see the pressure on the plates increase, and we're going to watch this. I'm not predicting anything. I'm just showing you how I've done it for years, and it's fairly accurate, more accurate than any other earthquake prediction system I've ever seen or studied. It's simply to watch the sun and what's coming in. Let's go back and just kind of see where we're at on a solar wind. Now, there's a difference in the satellites we were looking at that's showing our shields that are circling our planet. When you're dealing with Discover and that satellite and the satellite there, it's a little further out, and so we got two warning systems. The Discover will show us when the solar wind speeds and density and temperature are increasing, and but the GOS system circling our planet shows us the impact and the actual time. It gives us up to about 45 minutes warning starting out at Discover satellite, and then that decreases as you get to the other satellites. But here you can see that we are still increasing. We had a slight peak here, and it's starting to drop back down, and you'll see that. But we have not reached the impact point yet. Remember, before 12 noon, there's this IMF field that's moving in front of the coronal mass ejection itself, and that may be what we're starting to see, and because it was a few hours ahead of that. But guys, this is again the way to do this. I want to go to our website for a moment. Just hang in there, guys. Change these screens over. I can see why you need someone, a producer on some of this if you have the equipment. This is just one computer we're dealing with here. There. Okay. Now, I said the links are here, the very top on the left. It says earthquakes. That's the USGS. You can scroll this down, and you're going to see you've got hurricane weather information, Solar Dynamics Observatory. That is a satellite that shows us the very images of the sun currently, as far as the most current image by the time it gets from the satellite back to the planet and is processed. Solar X-ray flux, UV index, stereo satellites. That's the satellite that's kind of on the other side of the sun at an angle, and we get those back shots. Soho, Alaska, we watch it all the time. Solar wind speed, some hurricane magnetopause, which was showing the satellite circling our planet a few moments ago. Proton flux, CME trackers, but so everything's here. Solar ham, and let's go to solar ham just a moment. I want to look at one of the models. And what you can do, again, is saying geomagnetic storm warning in effect beginning on Wednesday, December 9th, due to a likely CME. Minor G1 to a strong G3 magnetic storm. So they're kind of like I am. Usually you'll see G1 or G2, or they know it's a G3, but when you give that much of a difference, possibly from say a Cat 1 to a Cat 3 hurricane in this case, then they know that this is the first time this has happened in a few years, and that we have weak shields. So you can scroll down here, you can go back and look at the different solar flare detections, and this was the one back on the 7th that threw the CME at us. We haven't had one that strong since. You got real-time solar wind that we were looking at. You can see here that little spike that we just saw. And also there is a link right here. You see where it says CME tracking, guys. I hope you can see this. Let me pull this back up. But right above the solar wind diagram, there's a yellow link that says CME tracking. Let's go there a minute. And you're going to see a couple models. We use both of them, and they're showing this particular coronal mass ejection. This is showing when it left the sun. And when you see a full halo, that means, because this satellite is giving us an Earth-facing perspective, that it's like it's like when it's a full halo, guys, it's coming right at you. If it's to the left or right, you would see that. But when you see it circling the sun, it's coming our way. And one of the things that we may see on the LASCO C3 is an increase in energetic particles. And you can see them moving here. And we'll take a closer look at that in a minute. But sometimes they will almost override the image itself as you get a solar wind speed that is related to a coronal mass ejection. Now, I want to go to this particular model here. Let me check back over and make sure you guys can see it. There we go. I'm going to play it forward. Again, what you're going to be seeing is, as it loads, is the coronal mass ejection leaving the sun on the 7th. We saw that pulse on the solar wind going back 2 days ago, and our Earth is in the green dot here. And as it gets through loading, we will let it play forward. Here we go. Now, here is a highly energetic interplanetary magnetic field, you may call it. This is the solar flare right behind it. They almost catch each other, and that's indicated here. This first pulse of plasma density, and this is very strong, guys, because we average about 4 cubic centimeters, or centimeters cubed, excuse me, as far as the proton density. But this is going to go up to 50, and that has impacts itself. The first rise is this interplanetary magnetic field. The second very strong peak, not as strong as this one, but is the CME itself. And this is why I said when you have a slow rise in these lines, sometimes you'll see minimum pressure. But when you have a very fast impact, then you will have more pressure on our tectonic plates. Also, in this section at the bottom, also in green, both are representative of Earth. The red is one satellite, stereo A. B is another stereo satellite. But the Earth, we're going to see what's called radial velocity in kilometers per second. In other words, solar wind speed. We're dealing in the 400 range in this model, and it's going to peak up to around 800 kilometers per second, 1.79 million miles per hour. And again, you can see it. They've got it broke down in a couple of different ways. In this one, you're seeing both waves. Here in this bottom circle, again, sun in the center, Earth to the right, you're seeing the planetary magnetic field, this wave. And you see how wide it is compared to the one behind it. But in this red cloud, which is several times larger than our planet, just pay attention to that as we come back through. That is the coronal mass ejection that we're watching. And you notice, and let me stop this, when right there, 0600 hours today, this is universal time. They are ahead of us about 6 hours. So this at midnight, we started to see a slight rise. Again, this is a plus or minus 7 hour of window of the impact due to this model. But if we come forward into here, we're going to be at the 1800 mark. That's today at 12 noon Central. Again, we got to count for the 93 million miles this is traveling. And that's when we're going to start to see the sudden rise in the actual density. But notice when we're dealing with the first pulse from the IMF here, the solar wind is not really reacting, just a little. See it right there? And that's what we're starting to see now. But when the CME gets here, that's when you see the solar wind speed jump. And again, for the next few days, this is the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, that because the CME itself is so wide that the solar wind is going to stay up for a few days, up around the 500 mark. And slow, and then you'll see it start to ease off if we don't have another CME. I've seen these things come back to back when we start getting into the peaks, or really into midway of a peak, going back into a solar cycle. So again, let me play this thing through. And again, we're going to have a plasma density bump coming up very quickly. Then the impact of the solar wind here. And note that there is a plasma density increase up around to 40 during that point. So that's the amount of protons inside that wave. But I think the main impact will be, let me pull this up a little further, bring it up right here, is this red CME right there. And we should start feeling, according to the model, very soon, noon. And when you think about that, when you say noon or any time during the daylight, you know that you're sun facing, right? And that's where this is coming from. I'm going to go to a couple of other images. I want to check the solar wind. We're going to do a couple of other things as far as live. Again, this is a model. Let's see what we got here. Go back to the live solar wind. And let's see if you guys got it there. There we go. Now, as we look at this, you've got three things that I use to watch for the quakes. You've got some other things. You've got the phi and the BZ and all this in your magnetic fields, and you can see that they're kind of flowing along separate here. And then right as we're starting to get into this geomagnetic storm, some fluctuations in the magnetics itself. But solar wind speed here, again, 417, we see a little bump there as we're starting to see the effects of that first wave without a large increase in density yet. Yesterday when I did the video, we were around 4 point something, 4.1 centimeters cubed as far as the density. Now you can see that has doubled to 10.25. And again, that's the first wave that we're seeing. What we don't want to see, but very well could, is sudden spikes, especially in this chart here, the solar wind. Another thing, and it affects our planet, the bottom line in green is temperature, and it will stay directly related to the solar wind speed. You'll start to see this start to pick up very quickly too. Now, another thing that's unusual about this event is that a lot of times you'll see the solar wind in purple and then the temperature in green either rise together or fall together. But the opposite in proton density. In other words, a lot of times you'll see as the solar wind increases the proton density. This is just in an average solar wind. It will go down because It's like smoke coming off a fire. If the wind picks up, the smoke is blown away quicker. You have less smoke particles in the air per cubic centimeter because it's not lingering. So that will go down. But remember, this is supposed to go from what we're looking at again, 10.25 in density and proton density up to 50. So it's kind of a unique situation we haven't seen in a few years. We don't know what's going to happen. We do know the geomagnetic storms affect our body. And guys, your Schumann resonance, which a lot of people call the God frequency, it affects that. And, we talked about in Malachi the healing wings of Shemesh, and Shemesh is S-U-N, son, and Ben, or like Judah Ben Hur mentioned, that is S-O-N, that son. So as we see these effects on us, and we see what the situation on the planet between good and evil, God has our back. So all of this is not going to be negative. And if there's going to be healing in the wings of the sun, and if you think about the wings and you saw that coronal mass ejection coming at our planet in what's called a full halo, then understand what they're talking about. So some of these will have healing. There will be, could be, when you're dealing with Schumann resonance, 8 to 12 cycles per second, or the God frequency, there can be messages, healing of the nerves, things like that, alpha to beta. Again, those waves are the frequency of the brain during meditation and deep prayer. And so that's where that frequency operates. And with other types of healing that we don't know, but we do know that on the physical, on the planet itself, there's going to be technology that is used against humans. A lot of it's going to be satellite controlled. And so I'm not saying this one is what we're doing, other than possibly the earthquakes and the pains that we're dealing with and all of that. But a CME can knock out satellites, and depending on the strength of it. Now, the satellites have internal sensors, and they can pick up the burst from the sun. And a lot of times they will automatically go into a shutdown mode to protect them. I've seen the CMEs take out stereo beam satellite. I mean, very few images because it fried the optics on it, and they're very grainy now. So, and that's it's the same distance from the sun as the Earth. Stereo A and B rotate in our orbit, one in front, one in back of us as we go around the sun to give us a wider view. So there's going to be, as we see the solar cycle increase into 25, you've got 11.8-year term in that cycle. In other words, it will rise up for half of that point and then decline. But in the rise and the decline, even now in the early rise of 25, we're seeing this. And this is going to increase. So again, you're going to have negative effects, and there could be healing effects. Malachi, it's only 4 chapters. Read it. It's highly suggested. Now, again, let me refresh this particular page, and that's what you want to do when you go there and check this thing out, and then it will give you any updates. And it gives us a few more dots here. You can see density, again, temperature, speed, density, and our magnetics. And you're seeing some pretty good spikes right now, and you can feel that. And what I want to do, guys, is I'm going to go over and let's look at the latest on our Earth shields at what's called the Magnetopause. Just takes me a moment to change this over. But what I want, again, one of the reasons for the video is so you can do it yourself. There's an old saying: you can give a man a fish and he can eat one meal, or you can teach him to fish and feed himself for a lifetime. And with the things going on, this is very good knowledge to have. Let me bring this up. Here we go. Now, I'm going to move. Let me see. Here we go. Now, I want to bring this, make it live again. I'll have to refresh it. And let's apply this. Give it a moment to download. You'll see it here in the right corner. And it's going back 100 frames. And I hope you can see it. But again, 12, which is, I'm going to hold my cursor here, is the normal place that this white line is. And you can see as these waves coming from the sun, these satellites are giving us just a few minutes of warning time, because as the pressure hits, the satellites are detecting this heat where our shield is. And you can see it's starting to feel the pressure, but this is minute. Now this pressure will just about double. And I've seen line after line come in right there. But you can see your timestamp also at the bottom. This is kind of playing back from 100 frames to the current time, just to give you an idea. Again, your GOES satellites, 14, 13, and the South Korean communication satellites are represented with a diamond. This X, and it looks like, guys, that's that the Korean satellite is not broadcasting at this time. We're only getting the GOS 13 and 14. Anyway, they are sitting there and they're feeling this energy and this pulse. Again, the Earth is in the center, and they're relaying this data back to the Magnetopause position. That's called the SWMF, and part of the CCMC. This is all linked to space weather. I'm going to change this, and I want to look at one of the other CME models that we use sometimes. It's a little different in timing slightly, but they are very close on this particular event. And you've seen it many times on the website. Not lately, because we haven't had much to track. Same thing is happening here. You have the sun in the center. The first wave that is behind the coronal mass ejection itself is right there. And that's what we're starting to see. But they get very close together. And that's why, again, you see the two rises and the proton density back to back. And that in itself, even though the solar wind speed is increasing slowly until the CME gets there, that pressure, both the pressure going down and the release of the pressure, actually shifts the tectonic plates of our planet. And remember, it's not the size of the flare. It it is the size of the coronal mass ejection. You can have solar flares and not have very powerful and not have a powerful coronal mass ejection. And what that is an explosion on the surface of the sun, and it's throwing all that matter and at whatever direction the flare is on. But notice how much larger that the flare or the CME is than our planet. So you've got a lot of things affected. Notice you've got two satellites drifting in behind Earth there. Watch as it crosses those lines. So there's definitely an effect there. Now, what we're going to do again on for a couple of hours here, kind of watch the central part of the impact. If we go into the latter window, remember, plus or 7 hours, either way, on these models, then what I'll do is we'll end the live stream after the impact point, or unless it's starting to really get bad rapidly, we'll stay live. And then what you're going to see after we do end it, if it hasn't got here in a couple hours, is, again, I'm trying to go through things so you can do this also, then I will be coming in with rapid updates behind that. So I won't leave anybody hanging. But again, if you go there, and as I flip over to the website and you see the links that I'm clicking on, take a notepad and just write those down, and then come in, and you can kind of keep up with it yourself. And again, the live information from the Magnetopause and the solar wind speed is the most accurate. This and the other model are what's the satellite information that you're seeing is putting together for us. And that's why they give that window of direct impact, that plus or minus 7 hours. When you travel 93 million miles and you can do that, you're in pretty good shape. Now, again, the initial pulses from the sun, 8.2 minutes, but a coronal mass ejection can take from 24 hours to 48 hours, depending on the speed, because it's not like light speed, like the photon burst at 8.2 minutes. It's physical cloud of solar wind that's packed with protons and other elements. So that's what we're watching, and I'm hoping that you guys will learn this, because the what happens when Christ sets his foot down on this planet. I'm watching over in the comments here. Let me pull this down so I can kind of get it out. But what happens at that point? Why is it a good idea to possibly watch for an incoming earthquake? And you remember Shemesh, the sun, is involved. What happens on the planet? Largest earthquake man has ever seen, right? There you go, Mount Olive. Guys, how's the audio? Is it hanging in there? Again, we have um, very weak internet here, and that's why I don't do a lot of live shows. But this one was worth doing live. Just somebody give me let me know how the audio is. Audio is good. Thank you, least of the brethren. I appreciate that very much. Again, this is experimental to me too, because we were finally they got a little stronger internet in our area. It's not that strong compared to going into a city or something, but it doesn't seem like we are having the interruptions. If you remember, I think the last live stream was not this hurricane season, but the one before that. We were trying very hard to get a clear signal at all. So it's easier for me to not do live videos, because I can take them and just send them up on. But audio's good. Thank you guys. Thank all of y'all for coming in here. I'm seeing some of the names here I don't recognize, and some I do. But welcome to everyone. This is um, again, it's a learning experience for me, because we're in grand solar minimum, not just solar minimum, but uh, very weak shields because of that. And when I say that, our Earth shields, it's like you have a magnetic field. If you run an electric motor and you have a meter that you could read it, there's a magnetic field around it. You can see it. We have those meters on our website. But and if you increase the speed of the motor, in other words, what you're doing is allowing more voltage into it to turn it faster, that magnetic field expands out. So when we have solar, we're into rising into the solar maximums, in 11.8 year cycle, half of that's up, half of it's down. Then the solar wind speed and things like that are generating the dynamo that's our planet, and our shields do just like a motor. You got more current coming in, the magnetic field expands, and our shields become strong. Right now, that's not happening. So the motor and the dynamo is moving slower. Not that much, but enough to weaken the shields. And you think of our shields as very powerful, and they are. But guys, when we were seeing CERN go in during these events and really super power up, and you see they're getting the most powerful results that they got during these events, and it was actually collapsing the magnetosphere of our planet. Their field was 100,000 times more powerful than the field of our planet. Think about that. And so it's like our atmosphere. It's large, but it's delicate. And hello from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Hey, everyone. What are Corky's? What is the radiation level? We will check that. That's going to always increase because you, it already is up because we see for the last 2 years with the weakened shields how easily it is to sunburn or plant damage. And you can go outside and even it doesn't have to be bright sunlight and you will get hot very quick. And that's telling you a lot. And also over on space weather, they've got a chart at the bottom of the page that shows you the radiation level on the flights around the planet and that's really good because it's very high and that it's been increasing over the years because of this solar minimum going down percentage points each year. Like a few years ago, it's now 18% stronger as far as flight level radiation. Do I think CERN could counter the grand solar minimum? No weapon will can handle what God can do. When those angels start working with our solar system, when you've got that mentioned in Revelation, things like that, but in Malachi, these angels, these messengers of God that work with Him, part of His army, they have technology that man has no idea of. Now, the scientists at CERN, to me, are dealing with fallen angel technology. And those weapons will not prosper. That CERN is, I don't see any positive results. Nothing good can come with messing with God's creation. And when they start collapsing the shields, then it's like nuclear power. They're trying to get one result, but they don't care about the radiation and the damage that's lingering for thousands of years. So you just, some things you don't do. Now, they won't admit that they pull the shields down, but we watched it too many times when they were running at peak, that it was the ground fields. And there, several videos were taken down where I showed you the diagrams of the Earth's magnetic fields and the ground currents and where CERN was and why it was there, because it's up into the part of the planet in the northern hemisphere that has extremely strong ground currents. And they can pick this energy up because our magnetic fields, guys, that's how your compass works in north and south. And it's reading these magnetic lines that make up our shield. That increases dramatically during the events like a geomagnetic storm. But no, I don't think CERN is going to help us. They're supposed to crank back up sometimes this year, but there's several particle colliders around the planet. CERN just happens to have the largest collider itself, but they're almost getting past that technology to where some of the smaller particle colliders around the planet can do a lot, just like the cell phones used to be big. Now they're tiny. Same thing's happening here, and they're starting to learn ways to where they don't need that much energy to get the same results. You have sesame and that and things like that. And CERN itself actually comes from a system that was developed in Chicago. I think it's still there. And that thing was broadcasting with its small collider underground energy and causing earthquakes. Same thing happened with CERN all the way down the island of Italy at one time, because they can, Tesla actually invented it, but they can broadcast energy underground at great distances. And right now, someone helped me with the particle collider up in Chicago. What was that one called? I did, let me think a minute. Pharma Labs, that's it, I think. Thank you. And they were broadcasting up into North Dakota, South Dakota, somewhere underground through the rock systems. And nothing is, there's things you just don't play with. And the earth is fragile. You don't want to be causing tectonic pressure underground, cracking of the plates, and you don't want to mess with your shields. But as with most of the modern technology we see now, they don't care what happens to the planet or to us. They have a goal they're trying to achieve. Well, I hope the same thing about Malachi. I see that in the comments. But again, have faith. It says that we don't know when, but if I had to gauge when that healing started or when there was an increase in it, I would say as the evil increases, that will also match it and block it and back it out. If it hadn't been interfered with, remember, the end times have been shortened or no flesh would survive. Remember that part. So don't forget that. But again, you've got good and bad with these events. And I think closer to the end time, you're going to see more and more healing and see a lot of destruction. But if you think about this, I mentioned it in one of the videos, is that if you're say you've got Elon Musk satellite Starlink, which is basically wrapped the planet, enveloped it in a net or a web, which internet or the web, whatever you want to call it, they're both traps. The and you have Neuralink, which is also through the same company, and they're wanting to give you various things to hook you up, plus the surveillance that you won't be able to escape. A CME would be a very welcome thing if it knocked out the beast kingdom, put it into darkness, which has its spiritual and physical. But if it's getting so intense on God's people from the onslaught by man's technology called the tribulation of man, then he's going to shut it down. That's going to really let a lot of pressure off of us and stop that from surveillance to control long enough for us to get it back together. And I think we're going to start seeing the major earthquakes at that point. But anyway, no one knows a date or time, but that's how I look at it. The healing wings of Shemesh, that could be part of the healing. Free the technology that's controlling us, blocking God's frequencies. Why do you want to think they want to envelop the planet? Control of everything, everything. Now, I want to go back here and let's take a look at our solar wind speed. There we go. Now, again, we are here. We saw the peak. This is how this happens. Just like we saw this peak here when the flash left the sun, dropped back down, secondary burst there. And now we're starting to get, instead of a smooth line, it's starting to really break up. It's just, this is the IMF field hitting us in that wave. We are now 10:54 a.m. The models put the impact in just over an hour. Again, that window is 7 hours plus or minus. It hasn't happened yet. And to be honest with you, the majority of the time in the last 10 years as we watch this, it is a little later. It's usually in the second section of that window. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But that's what we're dealing with now. The magnetics are still being affected here. Your density is 9.64, again, about double what it was yesterday. Solar wind is at 415, was at about 440 here at the peak. But again, when that flare left and we saw that 8.2 minute impact, we were around 500 kilometers per second. We're going to go to about 800 according to this. Another thing I've noticed over these years is if they say 800 kilometers per second, you could very easily see momentary peaks up to 900 or 1,000. I've actually remember during solar maximum, some of the peaks at 1,400 kilometers per second. You're dealing 2 million miles an hour solar wind speeds. But I'll never forget watching the X flares throw the CMEs at us. Japan turned Earth facing as they approached the Earth, and the greatest nuclear disaster in the history of mankind occurred. And guys, if you remember the Banda Aceh quake, what was that, 2004? There was not a CME or a solar flare that caused that. It was that great tsunami. Nearly 500,000 people lost their lives. It was all over TV, the flooding and things like that, and the waves coming in over the beaches. But we had a gamma ray burst hit our planet. I forgot the number of it, and it blew a huge hole in our upper atmosphere, and that quake happened. So the sun, and not only the sun, but a gamma ray burst can come from a star that makes our sun look like a BB. A lot of the stars are much larger than our sun, and they travel, over light years. But when you're dealing with that proton burst, photon burst, traveling at the speed of light, we don't know exactly how long it took. Either they actually caught the burst on satellite, but it's hard to time it on some of the instruments. But and space telescopes and X-ray telescopes, but that thing hit, and we had that tremendous tsunami. Now, the mainstream will not talk about that. I did in several videos that they took down a couple of years ago, and maybe I'll redo some of those, and we'll look at the tracking. And I may still have all the information of when the flares left. And again, Japan turned sun facing like we are now. That happened, but those were X flares, and it was very strong burst. But this one is a, a pretty good sized coronal mass ejection, and our shields were strong during the time that the Fukushima quake happened. So it took a lot of power to do it. But what was that, a 9.0, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around that on the earthquakes that hit Fukushima? And they haven't got that under control yet, guys. They took it out of mainstream. They don't like you talking about it at all. But it has gotten no better on what's being dumped into the Pacific Ocean. They just don't have any way to control it. But anyway, yeah, maybe it's a good thing if we get reset back to more simple times. You're right. Now, if you're prepared, because you're talking about when they say reset, guys, it's not just monetary, population, government control resets, and we talked about having food, and regardless of where you get, if you get long-term food from our website, or you get beans and rice from the store, what we're seeing is there's going to be a card that comes out, and it will show what if you've been through the line. You understand what I'm saying? Or you're not going to now, and they won't let you go out in some places, even to the grocery store, unless you have that card showing that you've been through that process. And one thing that I think we're starting to see it, because of that process, some people are having some very bad effects, even death. So the longer that you can keep from being forced into a situation that you have to feed your family, be prepared, because there will be a wave of effects. And hopefully, when the planet sees that negative wave of effects, then more and more people will wake up, and maybe that process will stop or slow down. But this initial wave of that, you need to be prepared for. Again, I don't care if it's beans and rice and cans and bags. You better be prepared, because these events are coming. And you don't want to be, oh God, I've got to run to Walmart or somewhere because I'm out of this and that. Well, you better start getting prepared for that. You don't want to be put in the position. Now, think about it. I say the mark is, unless it's you volunteer for it, it is not going to affect your soul. It's going to affect your body. But if you volunteer for that, there may be a different outcome if you are awake, if you have knowledge. But so you, even regardless of the effect on your soul, there's some pretty bad information coming about on the negative effects of the event itself. So the longer you can stay out of that position until something happens to stop it, the better off you're going to be. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure most of you do. Let me change the screen up. Give me 1 minute here. Now, I want to go back to space weather a moment, or excuse me, solar ham. It's also linked solarham.com on our website. And notice you have an aurora chart here, and they're already getting very bright on the other side of the planet. And because this solar stream is going to last longer than the impact, remember I showed you how wide that red band is that's coming. You could have some very bright auroras tonight here in the U.S. a little further south than normal. So you guys watch for that. I've heard mention again the northern states there. So that may be if you've never seen them, that may be kind of cool to watch in itself. But the auroras are part of the sun, whether it's Shemesh or not. They are part of the same energy, and they're very fascinating. You don't have the heat factor, but you have to live a lot of times in some very northern latitudes to see them. But they have been changing during this solar minimum that we're going through. You're seeing more and more different colors, more of the different phenomena is involved with it. And just in the last few weeks, they're discovering new particles that are part of those. And so again, all of that, all of those particles, all of that is flowing from the sun, and we you can't live without it. That's for sure. So it's good to try to understand it from all aspects. It's a very good time because it's very dominant. I'm not talking about sun worship. I'm talking about understand what Shemesh is and the power that it has. And of course, life without the sun or water or oxygen, you're not going to make it very long anyway. The Yeah, I noticed some. I want to say hey and thanks all you guys for coming over there. Again, I'm seeing folks that I have not seen and some of my very old friends on here. The Paula, I see you're saying incoming planetary system behind Earth confirmed on the magnetosphere models. Now, I watched that model a lot, and I haven't confirmed that. Now, let me say this: I know that there's a lot of Planet X theory going on out there. If you study my Nubaru videos, guys, you'll see a little bit more about the ancient history of it and what the scientists think actually happened when you had the planets of the crossing. You saw some collisions in the inner solar system. But guys, in the night sky right now, you can see Jupiter and Saturn getting very close. And on December the 21st, they're going to be the closest that they are visible. Not sometimes this has happened, but they're on the other side of the sun from the Earth, and you can't see them. But the December 21st, they're going to come together. Some call it the Star of Bethlehem, but the last time was in the 1200s, over 800 years ago. So you, and also when they're not going to be that close physically, but that means they're going to be aligning, and they're going to look like they're almost blending together, less than 1 degree, I think. Uh, then you have planetary alignments, and that will affect tectonic plates on the Earth. You get strong planetary alignments, and they start lining up along with the Earth's magnetic fields. Um, then we've seen that happen. Uh, Phil, you just said you watched the Flynn interview. Well, of course, I'm busy and trying to deal with this without anything going on. So I appreciate that update. Yeah, December 21st, Aries. Um, yeah, we're dealing with just not very long ago. But if you look in the night sky now, they're already very closely. And on space weather, they have information and some photographs that are coming in, but they're going to get much closer than they are now. And again, because of the time of the year, I think maybe 1220 something was the last time this has occurred. Very bright, because they're doubling the intensity when they get that close together. Now, let me change this up just a little. Now, I flip back over to the GOES satellite location, and it's showing the 14 and the 13 here. And as we talked about a few moments ago, I hate to repeat it, but we got new folks coming in. That's what you're looking at are two satellites that's orbiting our planet. In the center, the white circle is the Earth. The white half of that circle represents the sun facing side. And the energy you're seeing coming from there is increases in solar wind speed, solar density. It's not up above 400 or much above 400 at this point. It's supposed to double that. But these are the latest images. And also this white line indicates where the magnetopause is. The pressure pushes it in. The closer it gets to the planet, the greater the tectonic plate pressure. And at the bottom where it says 10 to 15, these numbers, 12 right there, which is about right in this area, is the average standoff point. So you can see it is under pressure. And the reason you're seeing the rapid movement because our shields are weak. So even minimum pressure will do this, but this is going to be building up over time. And I think I want to go to our website, because you can't just click on this particular link. You have to go to another link, dig through um, their links, and go to this. And that's what we're going to do. We'll go to this is part of the ISWAC Signet streamer. It's what this is called, but it's part of their series. So and I know it's hard if you don't know how to get to this one. Let's go there and look at it, because that's kind of what this was about. I wanted to show everyone how to do this as we were watching the event. But I'm going to go to our website at bpearthwatch.com. And I'm going to change the screen here. There we are. Now I'm going to scroll down on the left, and if you guys can back the video up after it's uploaded, or make notes or whatever you want to do. But if you're interested in watching the live time or close to live feed of our shields, this is the way you do it. So you want to scroll down on the left, and it says Magnetopause. So that's what we're looking at right there. See that right under the hurricane info from Fox 10 down in Florida, I think. But Magnetopause, click there. And that's going to take you to a list of these different segments. Now, right here at the top, and I know it's hard to see. Let me try to get it a little larger. you're going to see the listings of the different events. There's hundreds on them here, but we want to go to the magnetosphere. See that right there? I hope you can see it. Now come down to about the ninth section, and you're going to see two of the three different magnetopause models. Now let's go back one. Let's see, it would be the last one on 8, excuse me, here, which goes right into the 2. Click on this one. This is the one we've been watching. It's called the RCM, or magnetopause position. It shows the semicircle shape showing a model computed location of the dayside magnetopause. Usually the rightmost position of the semicircle is about 10 Earth radii upstream from Earth. In other words, 10 times, if you put the tiny circle, copied it and pasted it 10 times to the right, that's your average. And that is at 12 that I was showing you on the standoff point. The most sunward boundary position is called the magnetopause in the standoff. This version includes the RCM model of the inner magnetosphere. The ISWA real-time simulation should be considered only as science and prototyping quality. Guys, it's a disclaimer, but it's very accurate. And so we're going to click there. And that's going to bring us back to what we were just looking at. And you can make this larger or smaller. And then what you want to do is here you have a little movie button. Click that and let the few frames here download. That's going to give you the most current time. Here we are, 1700 hours. 1800 hours, guys, which is not showing, is noon central. This is universal time. But you can pause it here. And then here you have like a calendar. And you can put certain dates. Now it's showing 10 frames. Again, I hope you can see this, but you can back that up. You can and just hold the button and it will increase in speed. It'll go backwards in frames up to 300 frames. We'll stop here to 125. That way you can look at what it was like and then what is happening now as we see increasing solar wind. Apply that, give it a minute to load those extra frames. And there we go. So you're going back into earlier today on the 9th. You can go back to 300 frames, and that gives you a very good average. And here's your standoff point about right here. This is the normal 10 radii, and you see that pressure coming in. These are the newest images going back 125 frames. And you can actually grab this and move it back and forth to see what you're dealing with. We'll go to the last frames there, and you can see that we're kind of right in a pause. In other words, 2 waves, a very hot wave just hit us, the planet, not as bad as it's going to get. Then you see it pull back. So these will come in waves, and they will build up. I've seen it get red, the entire thing. Guys, we've seen this magnetopause flow the opposite direction. That's an amazing thing in itself. There's a couple of different reasons for that. But again, that's how you get to your magnetopause. Again, you'll when it hits, you'll be on a system like this. And in this case, you want to go to magnetosphere, go to number 8. You'll see this one. Now, if you go to number 9, it's going to give you a little different streamer. And let me show you what that is. Same thing, you got to download from the movie, get your current images. And the same thing, you can back it up in time for different frames. What this is showing is not just the pressure that's on the inner magnet, but it's showing how strong the wave is, because these waves are much larger than our planet. And you can see the magnetic lines are being pushed backwards. They all connect at the top and bottom of the Earth and some other places. But that is why your compass points north and south. But as the blue areas build up, that's plasma pressure. They will blow off the back and really distort the magnetic field. And I've seen it. What's happened on this before? Let me pull it up a little closer. These magnetic fields, they have openings in them. In other words, you can see that these red lines are out where the satellite bands are we're watching, and there's shields out there. But when you have an opening like right there in the top between the black lines and these red lines, that's called a cusp or an opening. And a lot of radiation can pour into that. And as we see this increase today, You may see these red bands where the radiation is the strongest pour right into these openings. You'll feel it. The plants will feel it. If it's bright and sunny, you'll sunburn, and the pressure will increase. You're talking. I had the question about radiation. So the information, it takes a little time to go in and study what we're looking at, but it's very interesting to me. And to be honest with you, the website was kind of set up at first with all the links simply because I wanted to go in and check them, and I wanted them all in one place. So we started piling them in there, and then the channel got bigger, and we expanded that. But there's a tremendous amount of information here with the different segments and on our website too, guys. Now that is, again, just kind of a primer on getting to that. I don't know if that helped anyone or not, but that's how you do that. And you can't just come and if I could put a link just to one of these segments, I would, but it doesn't allow you to do that. You have to go in through this section and then get to those different ones. It used to be not be like that, but when they upgraded their site, now you have to go right there. I would just put a direct link to it. Yeah. Yeah, someone said go Texas. Guys, I grew up here, but I was born in Austin, Texas. So got a little Texas blood in me too. And I'm really proud of what they're doing as far as politics right now. And our state, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida, have joined in on that case that's pending. How long will it last? How long will it last? You're gonna, Linda. Thank you for the question. Let's go back to one of the models. Let's see what we got here, guys. I'm pull this out. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to go back to solar ham and kind of go through that question just a little bit, guys. Again, this site called Solar Ham is linked in the left column on our website. You can go directly there. I just have, like I said, I linked up things that I use in one place. And what you're seeing here is that burst on December the 7th. And this is not from an Earth-facing satellite. Let me get that a little closer if I can. Let's see how that works. It's not too blurry. Anyway, they issued yesterday on the 8th the geomagnetic storm warning because of this approaching. But this image is a grainy image, and it's from the stereo satellite that I told you was hit. Both of them have been hit by these coronal mass ejections and just about fried the optics on them. But they are past their expected lifetime anyway. But this image is a satellite that is trailing Earth in its orbit. And so it's giving in the same orbit. So it's the same 93 million mile average from the sun, but it's showing what is going towards our planet. In other words, the Earth is to the right, and you're looking directly from that particular satellite. And space weather is saying geomagnetic storm warning in effect beginning today due to likely CME impact. That's what we're looking at. And we scroll down from there. He's going to give you one of the models. It's called CME tracking is right here. We have the other one on our website. I left the solar ham linked where you have all of it when you go there. It gives you solar wind, density, temperature, magnetics. But here, if you go to CME tracking, it's going to give you both of the models. This one just pops up. The timing can be slightly different, and that's good because it gives you an average of the two. This one you have to click on and make it larger. Let's see, SWPC. Then you have to actually click the play button, give that time to download, and it will start playing. Now, what it does do is give you the pause and play button to where you can stop this or move it to certain sections. Now, that's yesterday, on the 20th, last night, getting into the 9th. First, we're going to go through the initial solar wave. We're starting to see that. That is not part of the CME. It's this band right here that's highly energized. Then you see the coronal mass ejection come off the surface of the sun, comes out. They're showing impact starting very well by the 1800 hours, which is 12 noon central. But notice we're already involved into that wave. Now, notice at the bottom, the CME that we're watching is not in the yellow. That's this first wave there. But the red indicates the coronal mass ejection and the explosion from the sun. And you right there, if you can tell, the Earth is in the green dot, but the solar wave or the solar wind speed and the proton density impact inside the CME is about 3 to 4 times the width of the planet. So we're looking at, we'll go up to the 1800 hours, 12 noon today, Central Time, 1 a.m. on the East Coast. And as we go through time, watch how long it takes. Now we're on the 10th. We're still involved in that red wave until right here, almost 24 hours. As a matter of fact, 1800 hours tomorrow, 12 noon Central, will be in the tail end of it. And that's indicated because the solar wind speed in this chart stays elevated. Normally it's about 350, and they're showing it's going to hit around 800 at the peak of this. And that is just before 1800 hours right there. This one we're going to start. That's 1900 hours. Right in here is where we're going to start seeing the impact again, plus or minus 7 hours on the window. But that's a very steep curve. It's not a slow rise. And the solar wind speed it starts to slow rise, and then there's a straight up line here between 500 and 800 kilometers per second. And that brick wall, that quick peak, is where we see the greatest pressure on our earthquakes. And if you go to BP Earthwatch, the top link says earthquakes, goes to the USGS. But that's what we're dealing with here. And how long will it last? The effects, if you come back over here, you'll see the density and the solar wind speed change. Now, notice here we're going to have the plasma density impact and solar wind impact. But notice the density, how after the CME comes past us, the density drops very low. That's because, like I said, it's going to blow the particles of the density past the Earth very fast, thin them out, like the smoke effect in high wind. And that's why that will help as far as some of the aches and pains. But your solar wind speed is going to stay up around 600 or 700 kilometers per second, close to 1,000,000 miles an hour for the next 2 to 3 days. So that's kind of how you would tell how long that would last. That's what we got. Again, what we're basically bouncing around a couple of different links here. If we, let me go here and take this out. And I want to bring in spaceweather.com, one of the sites that we watch quite a bit. 1 second. It's also linked on our website, guys, on the left, in the left columns. There we go. Let me make this a little larger and make it as easy as I can to get this information where you can see it. And I know this is just a rough raw program, guys. That's kind of how I am and how it is when you're doing it like this. This is today's space weather. We got 14 kilometers per second solar wind. This is real time too. Proton density is 9.0. It was 4 point something yesterday, so that is double. Solar wind speed is up from about 350 kilometers per second, which is very fast. You got 6 hour max on your solar flares. They're talking about an A6 1206 UT and just different information you can look at. But here in the center, it says geomagnetic storm warning. It's coming. Coronal mass ejection, or CME, is headed for Earth, and geomagnetic storms are possible. when it arrives later today or tomorrow. Today, according to the models, again, we're very close to that point. NOAA forecasters expect the most intense disturbances to occur on December 10th, with peak storm levels near Category 3. Guys, but the impact is today. Then it's going to linger. Now, they're putting in a very wide window, but the model itself says a 7 hour plus or minus. And so this is video is about trying to watch if it comes in a couple hours of the program. If not, there will be updates, but it's showing you again, spaceweather.com right there, live information on your solar wind speed and your protons. And that's going to tell you when the events are getting stronger. They're saying it could be near a category G3 geomagnetic storm between now and then. If that happens, auroras could be sighted in the U.S. and states as far south as Illinois and Oregon. You can sign up for aurora alerts. They also mentioned while we're here the Great Conjunction, what I talked about earlier, Jupiter and Saturn. They're converging for a rare Great Conjunction at closest approach on December 21st. They'll be just a tenth of a degree apart, so close that some people may perceive them as a single star. Some people call it the Bethlehem star. Now, these are images from today at 7 p.m. in, where's this, in Germany? Can't really read it there. Anyway, this is how close they are now. And I think there's some other images that they're taking them down now. But it says the two planets are easy to see over the western horizon at sunset. It says Hazari El Almad of Capon Karam, Brunei. Okay, we took the picture on December 9th. I'm looking forward to the evening ahead when they get super close, or the evenings ahead. Jupiter and Saturn have a close approach encounter every 20 years, but usually the conjunction is difficult to see because it happens so close to the sun. You're blinded. It's on the other side compared to our planet. 2020 is different. It sure is. The giant planets are joined together in plain view during evening twilight. The last time they were super close and easy to see was in the year 1226. It's a rare event indeed. Dates of special interest during the grand conjunction of 22 include December 16th, 17th, when the crescent moon passes the planets. December 21st, when Saturn will be at its close approach to Jupiter as some of Jupiter's moons. That's what it will appear like. In other words, if you could see the moons of Jupiter, the four major Galilean moons, I think there's 66 named moons, but in that image, and they can do it on the telescopes, you'll see Saturn in that circle of imaging. Pretty neat. But there's maps that you can. And let's look at the one for December 21st. And so you're looking west at sunset. Sagittarius is here. Saturn and Jupiter will be slightly left of south. Of west. It will be more southwest. Capricorn, Altar will be here. The bright star, Vegas here, and Mercury is below the horizon. But that will be rising very quickly. But this will be brighter on the 21st. It will be just south of west, just south of, a little to the left of where the sun's setting. So that may be pretty neat. Now, if you look at it, it hasn't happened in 1226 years. How long has it been before that it happened at night? And that, makes you wonder, because some people call it the Bethlehem star, even though it's two planets. That the reflection from the sun makes them appear stars. So that's kind of interesting in itself, because there's a lot going on. December 20th, 21st, important dates as far as some of the election things that are going on. Now, give me just a second. I want to show you a couple of things here. Now, you were asking about X-rays and cosmic rays. If you pull this down, you can see a section here. It says cosmic rays. Solar minimum is underway. The sun's magnetic field is weak, allowing extra cosmic rays into the solar system. Neutron counts for the University of Ulu-Sodeqala Geophysical Observatory show that cosmic rays reaching Earth in 2020 are near a space age peak. You got the neutron counts, and it gives you information there. Your aurora information, real-time aurora photo imaging, and it has different photo libraries, comets, things like that. Also, it tells you some of your fireball information that you see, and we're going through a minor meteor shower now, maybe 4 to 6 per hour. Then you've got below that different asteroids, and when you see the mist distance, and the color code goes from orange to white. The orange are supposed to be the closer ones. Guys, they changed this about 6 or 7 years ago. We called them out for putting misinformation on there. And you used to see a lot closer asteroids, but they quit doing it. And it's kind of a shame, but 0.1 LD, guys, which is, the closest one they're showing here, that is still a tenth of the distance to the moon, 30,280, I mean, 28 to 30,000 miles away from our planet. Now, when they get close, it's when they are going to come into our atmosphere, or in the upper atmosphere between us and the moon, maybe, you know. But anything that, and a lot of people ask me about, well, what about 2020 XK1? It came by two days ago. Guys, again, 30,000 miles from the planet is not close, not to me. And we wouldn't even see it. You wouldn't know the effects of it. I guess it's good to list it. And another thing about the radiation, and they call it something new. It's been here a couple of years, but it's called a daily hot flights chart. This is 2 days old. And what they do, I guess they've had people on these flights and different ways to measure the radiation. But this gives you the dose rate of the amount of radiation that you're at on particular flights. It gives you altitude times sea level, destination duration, which is important too. But the brighter the if you go from white to orange, you're getting into the dose rate at 63.5, and that's been increasing over the years by several percentage points. And so that, of course, it's higher at these elevations, but that definitely correlates with higher doses at the surface, especially during this grand solar minimum. The and if you pull this down, it'll tell you a little bit about it. It says approximately once a week, spaceweather.com and the students of Earth to Sky Calculus fly the balloons up. They do it mostly in California. They every once in a while will go over on the East Coast and throw a couple up. It says the balloons are equipped with radiation sensors that detect cosmic radiations, a surprisingly down to earth form of space weather. They can see clouds, trigger lightning, penetrate commercial airplanes. Furthermore, there are 4 studies linking cosmic rays with cardiac arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death in the general population. Latest measurement shows that their cosmic rays are intensifying with an increase of more than 18% in the last 5 years. This started in 2015. And this is the chart right there. It just shows you that in the last 5 years, going into grand solar minimum, the shields are thinner and you got more radiation. The data points in the graph above correspond to the peak of the regenerative Pfalzer maximum, which lies about 66 or 67,000 feet above Central California. When cosmic rays crash into the Earth's atmosphere, they produce a spray of secondary particles that is most intense at the entrance to the stratosphere, and it scatters them. Physicists Eric Renninger and George Pfalzer discovered the maximum using balloons in the 1930s, and it is what they're still measuring at spaceweather.com to this day. Now, what's interesting is we talk about aches and pains and cardiac problems. You can go up here and click on these different studies. Let's say for study number 1, and it will give you the information that is in that study. Give it time. Cosmic radiation induced software electrical resets in the ICDs during air travel. This is from Heart Rhythm. It will give you a lot of information. And again, it's when this is pouring in from our upper atmosphere through to the planet and through the planet in some cases. And it will give you the different studies, the different cardio effects, rapid ventricular um, tachycardia in patients with implantable defibrillators, all kind of problems there. Sinus node disease. It's really weird, but there's a lot of information. Let's go and I want to check back onto our real-time solar wind. Let me refresh this. We're still just past that peak, and it's going. We're at 1600 hours there, 1630. This is UTC time, and this will increase as we get into the storm, and we don't know the exact timing of it. But I think this is that first wave coming in. And if guys just coming in, if you go back to the 7th, this peak was the proton burst with some solar wind increased in speed increase at the point the flare left the sun, just roughly about 8 minutes past that time. And the satellites, which is in this time is Discover and active ACE and Discover satellites, and they picked up that burst. So this is another indicator that gives you a couple days alert on when you're going to have, if it's Earth facing, when you're going to have problems. And some of these satellites that are circling the planet, guys, if you have a burst off to the left or right of the sun, they don't get that information. You may get the edge of it, but when it's Earth facing like this one is, this is what you see happen. Yeah, guys, I'm looking over into if you got any questions or comments, I'm back over where I can see the comments now. Blue 7575 is asking anyone feeling stranger or let's see, it's moving kind of fast now. Anybody feeling pain, extra pain? Stinging pain, mine just came now. But Blue 7575, there's if you go through the comments, you're going to see other people being affected. And every time I've done a video about increased solar wind speed or CMEs, a lot of people come in and comment from dizziness to pain, headaches, sleeplessness. So you think about it, it does affect us on the physical level. And you think about the healing wings of Shemesh, that the changes that are coming. Again, not to change the point, but yeah, there's a lot of folks that are affected. Let's go on down. Sternum hurts, pressure, um, pain, headache, dizzy, nausea, dying. Linda J. Gent says every bone I've ever broken is hurting. Salvador says not feeling pain, but feeling teeny and some pressure. Guys, I've had it to really make me dizzy for a couple of days. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. No pain, right ear, clicking. Internet went out about an hour ago. I'm on the phone. And it can have those effects too. Now, I'm not sure if that's what's happening with your internet, but as going back to the Carrington event, this is not a Carrington event that's going to knock out the grid, but you can have effects on your satellites, and your internet will be affected, phones, things like that. The mama says, yep, I get dizzy, blood pressure changes, very Chad, causing changes cause pain, dizziness, headaches. Gina Downey, nausea, headaches for 4 days, something that feels like vertigo. Exactly. Ears have been ringing. Power's going to go out. pets are acting up, picking up signals in my foreskin. Yes, pain in the right ear and feeling really tired all the time. Hearing high pitch noises, dogs crying in the middle of the night, ear problems. Can it affect hurricanes? Sure, it can. If the atmosphere heats up due to the radiation pouring in, heat is one of the factors that hurricanes feed off of. Had a ripping headache for 18 hours. Um, Vertigo to the max plus ringing in the ears. So the effects of this, and it goes to the Schumann resonance. Also, your nerves, that has a lot to do with it. Hello, my friend Nine Fathoms. As it's moving fast here, I'm trying to uh, answer it as quick as I can. Severe pain in lower back, ears are ringing bad today, um, right ear ringing. My cat is barking very good, toxic. Um, Heart palpitations weird, and that's what they're talking about. If you look at the four studies, they talk about cardiac arrhythmia and cardiac arrest has occurred because of the radiation. And when it pours in, then you have that. You have the pressure. My eyes are burning more than usual. Let's say, is it safe to? Let's see. Man, it's moving. Is it safe to observe? Yeah, you're not going to see this. It's not a. It's the photon burst happened in the upper atmosphere. Caught that when we had on the 7th when you had the radio blackouts. But now the sun will. And I noticed it yesterday. The sun seems to be a little more intense because if you're looking at the sun, you're looking at the direction the CME is coming from. I don't suggest it without some pretty good sunglasses, but it definitely seems intense. But it should. And you've got sunspots on the earth facing side, about four now, that are giving off more light than the sun normally does. Will my radiation meter going to rise in the next day? It could. Who was that? Let's see. Age of Aquarius is starting December 21st. Some say this is a great solar flash. Can we be outside? Sure, you can. The again, we're not in the. If you were in summer, it may be a little hotter, but we're here now. We're at 64 degrees outside, very sunny, very bright, very nice. But I don't think there's going to be an EMP effect that will affect you from being outside. Again, it's different year. We're into the very bottom and rising out of solar cycle 24. But I don't think being outside is going to hurt anything at all. There you go. No one's going to fry today. The Again, part of the half of the video is to watch it, and the other half is to show you guys what I'm watching and how to get there. Uh, and learn from yourselves. And when I've done this in the past, I've actually seen other YouTube channels pop up and start following that information. That's good because none of us are going to be here forever. And something could happen at any day. There needs to be more people that watch this. Now, you won't hear the scientists talk about it, but they don't want to have to rewrite those books and have to go back to school and learn what the real cause of the major quakes are. You're looking at it. Also, guys, this affects volcanoes. So if you have a link to some of the volcano information or whatever is in this afternoon and into tomorrow, keep an eye on that because if you have this much energy pouring into the openings that we were talking about called the cusp, then that's transferred into the core of the earth and the lava fields. And increased tectonic pressure can move, and how you can have an eruption through that. Could the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn affect the CMEs? It possibly could. There's each planet has a point on the sun and it moves, but it's called the magnetic connectivity point. There's huge plasma tubes that are, can actually, you can't see them, but we have a series of satellites that watch this. Each planet is connected by a very large plasma tube that goes from the sun. And guys, every 8 minutes, that tube cuts on and off with energy pulsing towards us from the sun. Think about that. The healing wings, exactly. And we don't know the point that that will change, but that timing is in God's hands. But He is not going to let the Neuralink and the Starlink completely take over and block out the natural frequencies that we need, the God frequency. Let's see. Yes, planets will align on the 21st. You're going to have Saturn and Jupiter, and you think about Jupiter is actually the binary twin of our sun. Most solar systems have two suns, but they're calling, some scientists, not all, call Jupiter a failed gas giant. But it is a binary twin in orbit with our sun. Jupiter does not orbit the sun as many think. There's actually, because of its size and density and mass, there's a gravitational point outside of the sun, and the sun and Jupiter rotates around that particular point. Look that up and that so Jupiter definitely has an effect. But going back to this magnetic connectivity point between the planets and the sun and those plasma tubes, those move on the sun each day, depending on where the planet is and how the tubes are flowing and the energy on the sun. And I've seen it when it gets, and there's a chart that'll show that when they update it, they'll show where the connectivity of the Earth is on the surface of the sun in a round circle. And when some of these stronger flares have touched that magnetic point, seen some of the strongest flares I've ever seen, because I guess it's like an arcing effect. And then the Earth is definitely more affected because that energy is transferred through that plasma tube called the connection lines or connectivity lines. But that's what we're dealing with. We're still watching this event come in. We don't know when we're going to see the second um, wave start to build up in the proton density, but again, plus or minus 7 hours. Going through this, to me, is a lot more important than a 5 or 6 minute video, because we've been on now for quite a while, since 10 a.m., an hour and 47 minutes. And that has given me the opportunity to go through so much of the different data points and the links to kind of try to explain what's going on. I hope that's helping. The sun is flat. Yeah, I guess if you're looking at it from the Earth, it appears as a flat disk, but I'm not a flat earther, not putting anybody down for it. I've flown across the nation above 30,000 feet a few times, and you can see the curvature of the Earth. And we're not in a dome. And I've never done a video on flat Earth because actually it's just too, how do you say it politely? Um, Too out of whack to even talk about, to do a video on it. So you're just not, no, I don't have mods, posses, but it's just not something that I believe in at all. I've studied this too long, seen too many effects, seen too much. Man, through whatever people think is being shown on the dome, do not have the ability to show the beauty of God's creation when you look into the sky, especially at night. Man cannot touch that. Yeah, plasma is like the umbilical cords, exactly, a Baker. And trying, I don't remember the group of satellites right now, but they discovered these as they were leaving the Earth, going out further into space, and they started crossing these tubes, plasma tubes or connection tubes. Then they started noticing that they cut on and off about every 8 minutes. That's and then it takes no time then at the speed of light through to get through those tubes. And another thing I want to say, the speed of light, there's questions about it and different theories, But inside a plasma tube, you may have a faster travel time. Instead of just blowing through space like solar wind, it may actually increase the speed of some of these particles. Um, just like if anybody's familiar with old electronics and vacuum tubes, they're sealed with like xenon gas. It's a kind of a form of plasma, and that allows the amplification to the tubes to make that made all the old stuff work. And so you that amplification of energy inside the these vacuum tubes, you see them in the back of guitar amplifiers and all the old TVs and things. You don't see them much anymore, except in the classic amps, but they represent this amplification, and I think those plasma tubes do the same thing. Well, I don't think you need to wrap yourself in foil. This is not one of the blackout CMEs, I don't think, at all, but it's the first one in a few 2 or 3 years, strongest one for sure. And it's more of about watching it, watching the effects. I would know, I have no doubt that we will see an increase in the earthquakes, the upticks. How big, we don't know, but you're going to see an uptick in that. And it's a learning video. So when you see these events, learn how to track them, and you'll be better off for it. Knowledge is always good. It's always a good thing. Uh, and no, the Earth is not flat. Toxic. A lot of people do that. I don't think that many people really believe in it, but they use it as a distraction from the subject. That's just beyond the pale how anyone believes that to me, because I've studied space so long and seen the effects, and I believe in the heavens and what the Bible tells us. But I also believe my eyes and my experience. Um, yeah, Charles, I'm just trying to be a little nicer, but no, that I don't talk about it, don't believe in it, and it's a waste of time, and it's a distraction from what's really going on. Like I said, man cannot duplicate what God has made. Don't ever believe that. Well, I don't want to delete him. I'm just not like he's attacking me or nothing. And that's not what I want to do. And you're not attacking me, and I'm not saying you are, but I just have so much information that goes contrary to that I just I don't know what to say past that point. But I don't want to block anybody unless you get really out of hand. But I can. I don't have any mods assigned in here. But again, you're welcome to say what you wanted to, but it's hard for me to really comment and come back with any logical response to something that I don't think is anywhere accurate. And so sorry, but I don't want to block you. Is there a question from Laura says, is there a possibility that, let's see, moving too quick, they could use a CME? Let me back this up. Thank you. Is there a possibility they could use a CME to do a false flag event, lights out? Anything's possible. Um, they also could use an EMP and call it a CME. And right now, we know that a certain people on this planet are desperate, just like Satan is raging back and forth because he knows he has but a short time. There's certain people on this planet that know that, and what they will do is beyond me, beyond the pale of what any normal human would do. But these people aren't normal, and some people say they would rather burn the house down than let them not have it. And we know that Satan hates us. He hates God's creation. So I don't. Ever since the nuclear wars and things like that, I'm not nuclear wars, but the nuclear explosions and tests that hundreds of thousands of them probably on the planet. But you started to see technology going into the wrong hands at that point. So I don't doubt anything that they will do. Not flat, but absolutely not a globe. What do you mean by that? Is it a square or a cube? With Sean, you know, unless all calculations by science are wrong, it's not a perfect circle if that's what you're saying, but it is definitely a globe. You need to read the Book of Enoch. It's described there, and that'll help you out some. But again, you got. When did this even pop up, guys? 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. But to me, it was like a distraction from the real things that are going on. You understand what I'm saying? And listen, I'm looking at the comments, and 99.9% of you understand God's creation, and I thank you for that. Because, but again, some distractions are simply that. No scientific data behind any of that, any of it, none of it. It's anti. It's like listening to a Democrat argue that there were no false ballots. Anyway, maybe we won't have to talk about that anymore. Let's see what we got here, guys. And I'm going to try to find some music, and I'm going to grab, get me something to drink here, grab some water and some coffee, and just give me a minute to rest my voice. But let me see if I can pull some music in. And I'm only going to step out for just a minute or two, and that's the way I can keep this going on as long as possible when I can do that. But let me see if I can find something here, some of our original music. We can't play anything else because of copyright. Let me look here and see what I can find out. I've got to back out a couple of these screens. Guys, just bear with me here. Guys, I'm having a little trouble getting the audio in on the new system, but we're still here. Sorry for the silence. Well, that's going to take me a minute to set up, guys. I'm hanging here. We're at 11:58 a.m. now. According to the models, that's supposed to be kind of the center point of the plus or minus 7 hour window. I've been talking about that, and we see it every time. But I'm glad we're doing what we're doing. And if we, in the next hour, if we end this video as we're watching, throughout the afternoon and the evening, there will be updates where I come in and as we see this. And I think it's important that when we do that, keep an eye on the earthquakes. That will tell you how strong the pressure is. And, you know, you've got major fault zones around the planet. A lot of times those are the ones that are hit. So we'll just keep an eye on it. Sometimes they're spread out. You have smaller quakes, but a lot of them, and they together take pressure off. Sometimes you have the larger ones. But this is the best method that I've seen in since Fukushima. to track these incoming CMEs and watch their effects. Again, it's always on the sun facing side. Now, the one thing about the solar wind speed cloud is that it's going to last 2 or 3 days. So the Earth turns during that period of time. So you'll have nighttime facing, you're going to have stronger auroras, and you're going to have some continued pressure. But the initial jolt is usually the one, if it's a straight up line or very close to a straight up line on the curve of the wind speed, then you will have it during that first part. Let's see. Let me go into the comments here just a second. 12 o'clock CST. That's it. 9. Thank you. Um, I've heard that too, that there was a cause of that. But guys, for what you're saying was the cause of Fukushima Slayer. But again, I tracked and did videos tracking it over a 24-hour period of the incoming CMEs as Japan was hit with that CME from an X flare that caused the quake. And I've heard the submarines attack the bombs and into the or launch an explosion down into the fault zones. Can't say that didn't happen, but I know what did happen, and we were hit very powerful solar wave that at the same time that we saw, and it was broad daylight. Remember, you could see on daytime cameras the reactors exploding, things like that, and the tsunamis coming in. It was daytime when it hit, and it was exactly when those flares hit our planet. But I'm not saying what something else could have happened, but in order to have something in position to match the input or the impact time of a solar flare. So if you had some type of other attack you were planning, you would have to have it in place because no man knows when the CME is gonna happen. You can look at the sun and see the flares are getting close to one another, or they're getting close to a filament. And if it hits that filament, it's going to throw one of these out. You can see that, but as far as exact timing to try to cover an incident like that, you'd have to be pretty much in place well ahead of time. Not saying it can't be done, but a lot of the events, especially these major ones that affect our planet, come from the sun, or in the case of Banda Aceh in 2004, a gamma ray burst. Check the Magnetopause RBF CAF. Thank you. I will do. Guys, this is what I'm talking about. More and more people that pay attention to this, then it gets to where everyone's watching different events, solar wind speed, CME, Magnetopause, and together, someone's going to come into the comments of whatever video you're doing and say, check this out, check out this particular link or whatever, because things are changing. That way we get better information faster when more people are aware of what's going on. But let's do that. Let's look at the Magnetopause. Guys, give me just a second. And yeah, just for the new folks that have come in, I know maybe 30 minutes or so ago, I went over this link of how to get to it, because you can't click on a link outside of their website to get to all of their features. So over on our website, if you want to see the live Magnetopause, you just come down to the columns in the left in gray, down to Magnetopause. You guys just saw it. I know it, but we need to get here anyway. And come to the top, you'll see different menus here and there's hundreds of segments, but go to Magnetosphere and come here to number 8. And this is the first of the 3 Magnetopause position monitors. If you go to 9, you get the next 2, and they give you a side and a top view and actually show you the magnetic field lines behind the sun. But let's go back and here to 8. and this is one that's kind of easier to watch and gives you a pretty good idea. And I'll pull it up a little bigger. There we go. Notice your timestamp, and you want to hit this play button, and it will load up the last few frames. I am 1736, 18, boom. Okay, what we're seeing, guys, is at 1886. So let me see if I can stop this. Back up, smaller. Okay, 1752. Now, at 1800 hours was 5 minutes ago. So it takes a little time to get this information in. And we're seeing as we move this up further, in just a second, everything's kind of buffering on my end. I got a lot of stuff open. Right there's your last frame, right there. All right, let me back that up. You see this burn off in the back, guys, at 1808.56. That pressure's come from the sun and has enveloped it. That's why you're seeing the auroras on the back side right now. But this energy is definitely building up at this point. Now, when you see this red on the backside, you know that there was a lot of absorption on our planet, but I've seen this red line build up and fill up the entire area. Again, you've got the numbers at the bottom, 10 through whether from minus 15 to plus 15, but your normal point of this white line, this inner magnetopause line, is 12. And right now it's close to 10. So it is compressed, like I said before, on a nice solar weather day, space weather day. It'll be cruising out here, wind speed at 300, 350 kilometers um, out in this area. But again, the center dot represents the Earth. The white section represents the sun-facing side. So all the energy is definitely pouring from the sun towards our planet, pushing it in somewhat. But I've seen these collapse this line into the satellite bands here. That's again your two GOS 14 and 13 satellites that are giving us this information. Also, remember, if you stop this, you can go back in time. We're looking at the last 10 frames, but you can go back to the last 300 frames. It will quickly advance in speed if you hold that button down. We'll just go to 100 or so here, apply it, give it time to load the new frames in. It should start playing. And that's going to kind of give you look back at before the event happened, show you some of the things. But this just went back a few hours. So you're seeing some of the same things, but it gives you a very good comparison to normal. And then you see an event come in and you can go back and look at the entire thing. I've done it many times. But this, again, you're seeing some of that burn off pressure in the last few frames there. And then you set your time. Let's go back. Again, you've got your other segments on 9 that give you a top view here. We haven't looked at that one yet. We saw the side view. This thing a little bigger. Again, same thing. Push your movie play button to download the last 10 images. And what you're seeing is the energy's coming from the sun. All the arrows are pointing that way. And you'll see that slightly change in color from yellow to orange to red as the energy increases. This is where you have like the magnetosphere point, like a heliosphere point, to where this is the edge of where the sun is hitting the shields of the planet. Right there. There's your satellites that are orbiting. These are the directions of the magnetic lines of force. Most of them pour past the sun, past the Earth and back into space behind us. We have seen this reverse, and there's a couple of videos out about that. I mentioned it. One is called the Jupiter Wind, and I can't remember the name of the other, but actually showed a complete reversal of this and everything go haywire for a moment. But here you're seeing in this plasma behind, and the blue is the plasma burn off right there. Some of these lines will turn and actually face back towards our planet. And if you've ever heard of a space quake, that can happen during these type of events. And what it does is just these lines connect back here when they shouldn't. It pops back, and there's a burst of energy that's fed back into the core of our planet via the lines of force. if that makes any sense at all. But this, again, this is the pressure we're seeing build coming from the sun in the red band as it bends around. And that will be just about doubling at the peak of the event right there. Now, the other one we'll look at quickly again is very good. It's all once you get inside the system, you can get to these pretty quickly. You can download the current 10 frames, and it's showing is not only as the pressure changes, but it throws our magnetic fields lines and part of the shield um, kind of out of whack. Notice in the front, you've got these red bands. These are closed field lines right here. But and I talked about this earlier. Now we're starting to see that. You see where this red, which is the highest charged particles, and a lot to do with the proton, it's all creeping in towards our planet. Now you start to see it in these V's, and these are called openings or cusp in the technological terms of this. But when that happens, and when the sun pressure is blowing back these outer black lines, and it's leaving the sun facing side of the earth, excuse me, exposed, and this is where your radiation pours in into these lines. We're starting to see some of that, and you're starting to see some of this back energy coming in change colors. This is going to build up through from now until the peak of this, and possibly 2 to 3 days afterward because of the increased solar wind. The dangerous part is the initial impacts in most of the cases. Very interesting to me. I know you guys have asked a lot of questions in the last few days about impact time and what does this mean and all. And I'm no expert on this. I've studied it a long time, but I can get through it, and I think that it will answer a lot of the questions. We'll go back to current wind speed now. Now, what you're seeing, and let me pull this back down where I can get it, is again your solar wind speed in purple, proton density, which is listed right now at about 8.83. This is pressure. It's supposed to rise to about 50. Solar wind speed should double from 432, 430. You're going to see peaks above 800 kilometers per second. That increases the solar wind by up to about 1.7 million miles per hour as it strikes our planet. That's unfathomable to the human mind, that speed. Very fast, but not as fast as the proton burst or photon burst that got here in 8.2 minutes. But these are going to increase. Your temperature will increase of the solar wind as the speed increases. And a lot of times your density will drop. But they're saying on the charts up to 50. And this is proton density centimeters cubed. So that's very thick, very powerful. A lot of energy is going to be striking our planet, and we saw the peak earlier. We saw the dip. Now we're starting to see it get back up above 400 there. And this thing, they will change the chart. Notice it's peaking at 500. This chart will go up and expand up to 800, 900, or 1,000 as the solar wind increases. Again, this is a 3-day chart. You can change it here at the bottom from 3 days to 7 days, just to give you an idea. And what you'll see is um, this was a side burst, the solar wind speed up to 520 kilometers. But then this is going back a week. On the 7th, this peak was when the solar flare left the sun right there, and it flattened back down. And now we're starting to see a rise back in it. 7 days, or you can go 6 hours and knock out the other days. And you just see from here, starting out at 384 kilometers per second 6 hours ago, you're now 455 on your peaks. Again, this is just about going to double. But what is very unusual to me, especially with our weak shields, is what is going to happen when this density goes from 945 there, its peak, to 682 and up to 50. Again, new science during solar minimum with newer instruments to watch it. Give me just a second, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, guys, back. Thanks. Just had to grab something to drink real quick. I'm looking at the comments. When did this happen? The solar flare happened on the 7th, and we're watching the arrival of the coronal mass ejection. Tonka driver. Let's see. Here you go. Again, I don't want to block anybody unless you're just being a complete butthole, and then I don't mind at all. But when you just got a question, your minor argument, no problem with that. But I just don't put up with a whole lot of stupidity when it comes to someone being trying to be really aggravating on the site. ETA, Angela, the time of arrival on the models have a plus or minus 7 hours. The center of that was 19 minutes ago, but I have seen them more times than not come in the seconds half of that window, past that point. So we're watching. Then what the video's about again is showing you how to do it. We can go. You can go quickly, guys. The quickest link to look at something is to simply go to spaceweather.com, and you can do that again on our website, or you can type that in. They've been there for a long time. Let me find them here. And at the very top, you can see the solar wind speed now is 410 kilometers per second. The density is 6.8 protons centimeter square. Yesterday, when I did the video, we were at 357 and about 4.1 on the protons. I've seen this go up today to about 9 or 10 almost in those peaks. So we're just at the very front end approach of it. If it was to rise very slowly, then you have a slow pressure put on the tectonic plates of our planet, and you may see more smaller quakes. It's the sudden jolts that really set things off, and that's the main thing that I watch these for. Although I do know the radiation increases and the anxiety, the pain, all of that, dizziness, vertigo, all of those things happen. But if you can, the more people that figure this out, and then when you see a coronal mass ejection and you're in an area that has a lot of quakes, it kind of gives you a time or a period of time to prepare for that and to watch it. No man knows exactly where one's going to happen, but you can see the signs of the events coming, and that's important. Yeah, guys, flight radar is showing 24 planes. You know, we lost a pilot last night, and what they said, it was up northeast somewhere. I can't remember, but they were looking for the pilot. A plane went down. They don't know if he ejected, so keep that in your prayers. Um, we're Air Force family here, and I see some of that plane leaving SeaTac. Yeah, a lot of many of you guys probably have watched a lot of the air traffic in the last few days, and certain sites have that. It's been interesting to keep up with it. A lot of military flights, and there could be different reasons, FOBs, forward operation bases, drills, training. But when you see the excessive things, you could be seeing a lot of troop movement, which I would never say as far as where or when, because I don't think you should give that information out. It could get someone hurt. But you could also, Trump has said that some of the things that are going to occur are going to be handed out through the military. So you've got some people saying it's because there's going to be some problems because of the election results. Monkey works is right, Sandra. Or you could see that same FOB procedure because of the wiggle of the virus. And so that's really hard to say. Hey, that's Steve at WSO. You're welcome, buddy. Um, the Mars Foods goals, not 666, it's 666. And guys, you know that number, I've done a video on the 666. The king lines back from the Sumerian days, not the average man, but the king lines also had numbers assigned to their name. And did you know that the even the Anunnaki had a number? It was 600. Anu's number, the king, had a number 60. Adad, some refer to as possibly Satan or one of the really powerful fallen angels, his number was 6. Then in the same time, it talks about Apollyon. And the names changed of these characters over time, depending on the Greek, Roman, whatever religion, Egyptian. But the character itself didn't. And just to point that out, that Adad's number is 666. Again, Anu is 60. Illuminati is, Anunnaki, could be part of the same, is 600, then 60, then 6 down to Adad. And just for information, isn't carbon 666 which humans are made of? There's just, we've got spiritual and physical implications in all of this, as above, so below. And so a lot of times you may not see but one side of it. I'm the worst of it. But yeah, again, Adad, who matches that number, could simply be Apollyon or Apollo as time moved forward into the Greek and Roman, what they call mythology, but um, I don't know. We know there was powerful fallen angels and offspring of powerful fallen angels, and the Bible mentions many times of the giants. Let's see. That's right, 666. And Adab could be one of the first names of Apollyon because his king line number is that. He is 6. His father was 60. The tribe was 600. I don't know about Nimrod. That's an interesting question. We'll try to look that up. I had a very long, extensive video on it. I think I may have put part of it back in on it. That was one of the ones that were taken down, maybe 2 or 3 thousand videos a few years ago. 1999. How do you know if the website is true? I don't know. How do you do it? I guess if that's important to you, and I'm not sure if you're talking about my website or anything else, but what the tools that I use are the best that I can find that we have available to us. And let me say this: I know that there's technology out there that people that watch these events, they it's far superior to what we get to see. So we kind of get the crumbs, but we do the best we can with it. Um, Thank you. Appreciated that. We've got a little better internet than we had a year ago when we were covering the 2019 hurricane season. We were trying to do it, and I've asked about the audio. Is the video buffering? Is it clear enough to watch? Because with our old internet speed and where we're at in the middle of the country, it was we couldn't get up um, very good video either. But this is about a CME, and the CME has to do with the sun, which you understand it plays a part in all of this. Atlantic fleet is almost all back. We have heard that too, guys, because a lot of troops coming home, and there's could be reasons for that, depending on what events are happening. South Dakota earthquake, and guys, what you do, you go to USGS, or you can simply go to bpearthwatch.com. The top link says earthquakes right there. It's going to take you to the USGS, and let's see if we got any new quakes. Really, we're not. You may be seeing some increase, but we're not really at that impact point yet. You've got 3.2 South Dakota there, Montana 2.6. These are pretty average quakes, guys. 3.7 LaSalle, Utah. Now, unless you're setting right, your house is setting on them, and then a 2.2 Eastport, Kansas. The strongest that we've seen are in off Mexico and at the western tip of the Aleutian Islands near Kamchatka, Russia, 5.3 there. But until we see that impact, and maybe we won't see any earthquakes. 99.9% of the times we see something like this approaching our planet, we see that pressure transferred into these tectonic plates, 5.3 chromatic islands region. They're 10 kilometers depth. A lot of times when they're offshore like that, they'll list 10 kilometers because they really don't know how deep it is. But again, the one here up in Alaska, that's the closest one in our area that will affect us because this energy has been transferred many times into some great quakes coming through the Alaskan chain and down through um, the into the northern parts of the San Andreas Fault and Cascadia fault zone that you see here in this in the fault zones on our map. Again, we're watching it, guys. The All you can do is bounce around. We'll go from here, solar wind, magnetopause, look at the uh, different satellites that's showing us input. Um, it definitely looks like it will be a North American event, and the timing is plus or minus 7 hours from now. That's how the models work. They always say that you got that window, the opening. And so I just wanted to come in at the center point, and we'll cover this for as long as we can. And then after that, it will be quick updated videos on what we see 3.0 west northwest of Robinson, Maine. Yeah, I saw that one earlier. Now that came in. We weren't quite getting as high as wind speed now, but the Earth can feel the changes. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, I don't know if he got that car back or not, Sonny. That's yeah. If you know, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt the studio thing. But Musk is quite a player, and there's a lot of things he does with his cars and all. It's quite a distraction. A lot of it's quite destructive. But the main thing with him is this Neuralink and the Starlink satellites that are enveloping our planet, making it a worldwide web in the greatest sense. And then if any of the cures that are coming up affect that, then and you're dealing with Neuralink also, then there could be some pretty rough stuff. But guys, as far as this, some of the things are being rolled out to stop diseases now. Pretty rough reports coming in on some of the earlier tests. They started yesterday over in UK, and some here. Pretty bad effects. That's all I'm going to say about it. You need to type it in, check it out. That's the kind of stuff that will get you thrown off your channel. They don't want they don't want you to be honest about anything. South Dakota quake 3.2. Yep. Well, hello, Mr. Robinson from High Plains. Uh, howdy back to you there. Say no to the V. Um, well, thank you for the super chat. That's not why I'm doing that. And actually, if I have to switch over to YouTube to see that, but let me say thank you. Let's see where you're at there. I didn't mean to pass you up. This chat is moving very quickly, guys. And if I missed something, I apologize. I'll find it. But thank you. You know who you are. And there you are, Curtis Caruth. Thank you. I didn't do this for that. But thank you. I appreciate it very much. I will get over to YouTube with my internet speed being slow. If I open up too many multiple windows, it degrades the signal very badly here. I've noticed that things will start buffering, so I have to be careful about that. I'm kind of doing it on the fly here. Um, Yep, we saw the quake in Maine earlier. The the manipulator is already in this yet. Does not matter what they put in it. Guys, and there's information about the actual test having the same problems if you paid attention to that. Um, TBs, you're actually not correct there. It was a Class C solar flare. That has nothing to do with the size of a coronal mass ejection. It depends on the other environments around that sunspot. You can have an X flare that doesn't have much of a coronal mass ejection, or you can have a medium flare with a very large coronal mass ejection, depending on the magnetics that are around the sunspot area, including filaments. and things like that. So, and I've seen this confusion since the first video on the 7th, but it was only a C-class flare. That's not a measurement of the coronal mass ejection. It's a secondary effect. And of course, if you can have huge coronal mass ejections with large flares, but not all the time. But this is the largest flare that we have seen 3 or 4 years, and the largest coronal mass ejection that's Earth facing. And that's why we're watching it. It's time to get back in gear on the sun. We've kind of been laid off of it for a few years because it actually has been very little activity. And so that's what solar minimum is all about. But now it's starting to ramp back up, and it's time to pay attention to it if you enjoy this type of information. Not everyone will. And you say, well, what's the importance of it? We just enjoy doing it for no other reason. Plus, I like to give a heads up on stuff that I watch and that I'm familiar with. Might help somebody someday. And again, it's a teaching video. There's probably a couple guys on here or ladies that did not know how to get to your CME tracker. And if you've watched, we've done that twice. And it's a very good tool. And we've got the earthquake charts up now, but we will go back quickly and check out space weather and our solar wind speed. Give me just 1 minute here. You can see that we're at 430, slight increase in solar wind kilometers per second. That's very fast, but not as fast as it's going to get at, we're getting 800 plus. And you can click here on discovery. It'll give you the full chart. You got 8.4 protons, centimeters cubed. That's amount of density or energy in the wave. And that's going to get up to about 50. Let me get over here. Let's look at discovery. And this is what we have. Again, I've got it on the 7-day chart. I want to move that back to our 3-day chart. 6 hours. I want to move it back to the 3-day chart here. Let that load up. And what we're seeing, get it back down, is we saw this rise. We saw it drop. Now we're getting back into our highest peak, 440, a little higher than that, right in this area. It's just a curve, a curve up of the last 3 days that we're starting to see. Your temperature is increasing, that of the solar wind. The density here now is at 8.42. That will go up to 50 if the information's correct on that. And we'll take a look at the model, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But we're starting to get this upward tick into our solar wind. And this is what we have here. Now, again, this one has information on it that's very important. The first one, the other one we look at doesn't go into as detail as greatly, but in the top of this, if it's a green line, it has to do with our planet here, plasma density, green here, and solar wind speed. Your red and blues are stereo A and B. The green line is what we're watching. This is showing again, coming in today, and we're starting to see a slight increase in it. But these quick peaks are what causes the pressure. Notice we are at 8.4. This it's centimeters cubed as far as how many protons are in that amount of space, and it's going to rise to up to 50. That's very strong. Some of the strongest that I've seen. What will be of effect during with weak shields? Don't know. That's why we're watching it. The second line is the flare itself, guys, right there. Not as strong in density, but that here, when we start seeing the first wave, which is this line right here, very strong. You see where it's getting black. That's the normal way, but it's being intensified because the solar flare is merging with, or excuse me, the CME is merging with it. And that is going to give the solar wind speed its kick. And there's a straight up rise point right here. We're seeing it start to rise gradually now in the time that we're at, as well as the plasma density. But until we see the actual CME hit here in the second rise, we don't see this spike right there. And that's the dangerous parts when you're getting up to 800 kilometers per second wind speed with a sudden rise, that impact like a hard right hook, then that will be the critical point. But then again, 2 or 3 more days of elevated solar wind, well above 350, looking into the 500 kilometers per second. But again, I've mentioned this in the other videos. When you're dealing with this type of solar wind speed, it's 1.79 million miles per hour as it passes and strikes our shields. So again, 800 radial velocity, that's solar wind speed, and 50 in plasma density. Very strong, very strong. I can't really remember one that high because if you notice, as soon as the solar flare is over, the plasma density drops really low, back down to 3 or 4 range. 10 is right there. So that will decrease, but the impact will have already happened. But the solar wind will continue. And you got 4 different diagrams that you can look at here. The red line pulling in here is the coronal mass ejection that's affecting or approaching our planet. And that you see it takes about 3 days for it to completely pass. Again, it's coming off the sun. Now, Earth is here in the green dot, and that's over the 3-day period of that elevated solar wind speed. We'll have to keep an eye on it. You guys that suffer from from nausea or headaches, vertigo, dizziness, pain in joints, that's going to linger a few more days. But again, we're watching for the earthquakes also. That's the top link on our channel. Now, guys, sorry about that feedback. The no, I want to. I'm going to take a short break and grab a sandwich. What I want to do is let me know if the audio is coming in from the music. There you go. This is some from our music here at the studio, and we'll watch this model play through. And just give me a minute. I'm gonna grab a sandwich. It's lunchtime, and I'll be right back. But let me let's see here. not gonna give a real with it. I'm going back live now, bro. I'm going back live. Okay, guys. Thanks for the break. Back. Um, Again, we're watching. If you guys are just coming in, watching the arrival of the coronal mass ejection coming in, and it's it's a kind of a science lesson, and in part, but it's important to understand what the effects are and what you can do about it, which is not a lot, but you do understand that you can. It's going to affect not only people but the planet as far as tectonic plate pressure. Even volcanoes can happen when these events arrive. Let me pull these. Are you getting? You getting the audio, guys? Thanks. I was trying to put some music in there during the break. It's a new system, having a little problems with it. Next time we do a live event, I'll have that worked out. But again, we got it. Sandwich was good. The sun is hot in Arizona. Yeah. I just left there last week. I was there for about a week. And it was cooler during that week, but you could definitely feel the intensity of the sun down in the. We were in the Valley of the Sun in South Phoenix, along South Mountain. For you guys that know where that area is at, 5x5 in the pipe. Thanks, man. Five earthquakes since 1 o'clock Eastern. That's 12 noon, guys. So within the last 54 minutes, ones and twos. What should you expect? Doc Larson, the impact is not here yet. That's what we're waiting for, and that will be indicated by our solar wind speed. And I'm going to switch over to that particular link now. There we go. Let me get to our link here. And guys, this is what we have. Let me make this a little larger if it would need to. But you can see the solar wind just in the last few minutes has increased now to 458 kilometers per second, and our density is now above 9.1 protons centimeter cube. This is expected to rise to at least 50 solar wind, at least 800 miles kilometers per second, which is again around 1.79 million miles per hour. The again, you can read here that geomagnetic storm warnings. It could be from a 1 to a 3, and a lot of people in the comments have already said they're feeling the effects of it. But if that helps you, someone says I wasn't answering any questions. I'd stepped away just for a moment. Let me look back here and see what we got. Uh, David Jarvin. Um, just wanted to ask, my store's out in the country and we deal with animals all the time. The cows and farm animals are going crazy right now. Can they feel the effects coming in? A lot of people say they can. Their dogs will bark and act crazy, and cats and things like that. Um, so yes, there you can. Now again, I think I'm back up full. Give me a 5.5 on the audio. Make sure. Now with the newer system, then I may be able to do more and more live videos. So as we work through this, I appreciate your patience. Solar wind and normal wind, homegrown normal wind, I guess is what would be what we experience here. Solar wind is highly energized particles that can compress our shields and cause tectonic pressure, which and volcanoes. And the tectonic pressure, of course, has to do with the earthquakes. Another one, dogs are acting up. Peak time, Jeannie Sanders, we don't know peak time of the model is now. It started at 12 noon Central Time, but with their window of um, possibilities, plus or minus 7 hours, we're not sure. They never come in right at that time. I wanted to come in a little before it, and so we could talk about the things that we're looking at. Yes, Edward, there was a CME that left the sun on the 7th. The CME has not arrived to our planet yet. That's why we're looking at space weather, and I want to refresh this. It's showing 458 kilometers per second, 429. So you see the fluctuation as it rises up, and when it drops, you see your protons dropping somewhat. The Discovery satellite, we'll take a look at that. Let me get this bigger. I'm sorry, guys, kicked it out. And you can see that we're dealing with, here's that peak we just saw dropping, going back and forth between 450 and that area as far as solar wind speed. That's expected to double. Get over there and pull this back, get it down. Here's your temperatures. But 431, we saw it drop off. We saw that peak a few minutes ago, 430, 455. Here is at your biggest peak right there, 456. Now, you're again, proton density up into the 8.4s. That's going to fluctuate just like we saw it here as it rises. This line should increase to where they have to change the chart that goes from 300 kilometers per second to 500 up to 800 in order for us to see the wind speed. The temperature is going to increase with that. Like I said before, usually when your wind speed increases, your proton density decreases. But I just don't see it happening, especially when they're saying the peak could be at 50. That's 50 centimeters, 50 particles a centimeter cubed of protons, energized particles. Again, magnetics, instead of being separated here, the red and black, the BT and the BZ, they call it. Now, because of the activity, is intermingling and crossing. That's those lines that you see blowing back on the Magnetopause um, as we see this pressure come in. Well, hitting around midnight wedge, not sure. Plus, if you had seven minus plus or minus 7 hours on their original time, that would be from basically 5 o'clock this morning Central Time to 7 p.m. this afternoon. But and that's what the models are showing. Different people are saying different things. The model is all that I actually had to go by, and the ability to watch the current conditions as far as solar wind speed. Yep, I hearing some of that same ringing also. Yep, 1 East, Tim, that's right, 1 Eastern today, and, that's 12 noon. That's was again, you've got that window of, 7 hours either way because it's traveling 93 million miles, so that's pretty accurate if you think about it. SpaceX is expected to, test a Starship today. It wouldn't be the day that I would put that much money up for grabs. You could have anything happening in there, just a slight, misdirection in your navigation, in your GPS that keeps these things in the right place. I would wait, but these scientists, they probably know more than I do if they watch this. Welcome back from Texas. JBit, the normalization, it may take 2 or 3 days because the solar wind was going to stay up for the next 2 to 3 days. Got a migraine also. Or you welcome. Uh, I'm again reading your. If you got some answers, guys, I mean questions, come into your comments now. I'm back over here where I can see them, and I'll do the best I can. And maybe there's folks in the comment section that know a lot too, and they can help answer some of these questions. Well, hello back from Minnesota there. Yeah, I didn't get up in Richie. I didn't get into Sedona. I was in again South Mountain down just it's basically South Phoenix area right there on the edge of the South Mountains is where I was staying, visiting grandkids. I love it over there. Not crazy about the city. I would prefer Sedona, but some you got to do what you got to do when you got to go see those kids. Um, this is something else. Vividness is saying been living with tendonitis for 40 plus years, but has been really crazy for the past 48 hours. And that this could very well have a lot to do with that. Mavis, a lot of planes in the air. Can an energy wave affect them? They, unless it's something like a Carrington event, I don't think so. What they may have is some blackout in communications um, with ionization, but I'm not sure. But more than likely, there will be some effect and possibly slight deviations in GPS just because of the energy. You're getting chemtrails over in California, huh? I got you, man. Does anyone know anything about Starlink? Um, Not the technical details, but guys, it's they're surrounding the planet with it, where you really don't have any escape from the surveillance or the control. He's doing about 60 sats per launch, I think, maybe more, and other times are small satellites. They're just as effective, but it's a worldwide web, like a spider web that they're creating. Marty Hunter having a difficult time trying to convince my son-in-law that the plates can be moved by solar weather. He's a scientist. Um, Marty, I can't help that. I've been battling scientists since day one over this event, and I've proven it hundreds of times as we watch these events during the last solar cycle. And within the exact time that they start happening, we have the larger earthquakes. Seen it too many times. You can't help embedded training. They don't want to rewrite the books. They don't want to go back to school. They and a lot of people, I'm not saying your son, they been taught a certain way. They don't want to break away from that. I'm sorry, but there's too much proof. Don't know if the Starlink sats will start following on us. They're very small. They're compact mini sats almost. That's why they can put so many out at a time. Um, but when they go out, when something hits them and blacks the power out, may be a good time. The ancient Chinese history puts that sunspots with calamities. Thank you, Data Junkie. Thanks, Steve. A couple of people mentioned the white light in the southern skies. The sun is extra bright, guys. Looking at the sun is extra bright because you got a cloud of energy pouring that way, and you've got sunspots on the sun, and they're brighter than a calm sun. I noticed it yesterday. Bolt, I was tracking Starlink's location this morning. On the website BP Earthwatch, on the right side column, not the left side, there's a sat tracker software that's free that you can download. Then you put in what satellites you're tracking, and it will show you a map of where they're at on the planet. A lot of them can orbit the planet, in 90 minutes. So they're going to place them to where there's no blank spots ever. No, the Earth's turning, the satellite's not geostationary, but they're putting them everywhere. And they may eventually become geostationary when they get the full web wrapped around the planet. But I think that's part of the healing of the sun. When it happens, just before they have full takeover, we're going to get a break. It's going to knock out some of that control. Thanks, Kenneth. The sun is extra bright, storing energy like Earth is storing up this extra energy. Then the plates shift to expel a little. Exactly. And when the plates compress from this, you have one effect. But when that pressure's off and they expand back, you can have secondary quakes from the expansion after the compression. But it does shift and move them, and can cause great quakes and big tsunamis. The two biggest have been because of space events. Yeah, on the monolith out there, they took the one down in Utah. I saw a video about that. They showed it was made, I think, out of aluminum with maybe a metal frame or aluminum frame, and they had etched down into the rock and epoxied it in there. But someone came, got it. I think they did a YouTube movie about removing it after about 5 years or so. They thought it would make them popular. I don't think it worked that way. You're welcome, London. All right, guys. What I'm going to do is we're going to check our current solar wind speed, and then, uh, like I said earlier, we're going to run a few hours. We've been now 3 hours and 11 minutes, and I'm going to keep an eye on these things, and then I can come in with short videos, and if I need to, come back live if we start seeing some pressure on the earthquakes. But I'm going to stay on top of it. But right now, you see what's happening. Let me go back to space weather, 429 kilometers per second, guys. And this is what you want to watch: the solar wind speed and the proton density as that increases. In solar wind, spaceweather.com, a link on our website. They're talking about the geomagnetic storm warning. So it's coming. A coronal mass ejection is headed for Earth. Geomagnetic storms are possible when it arrives later today. They're saying or tomorrow. Again, we're having to use the model windows that we have. NOAA forecasters expect the most intense disturbances to occur on December 10th. Now, that would be the 10th is going to arrive, UTC time quicker than it will here. So we'll have to see how late that occurs. But these forecasters at NOAA, it's kind of like NASA. You you get some information, but again, the models are showing this afternoon from noon until possibly 7 p.m. tonight. But the only way we'll know is keeping up with the instruments, and that's what I'm going to do. As I appreciate you coming, Space Weather has the information also on the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn coming up December 21st. These are current images. Well, these are, I think, a day old, but they're going to get so close to Saturn and Jupiter that it appears as one star, which neither one really are stars, but that's what they're going to be looking like. And come leading up to that, you're going to have a crescent moon involved in that. But they're saying with telescopes, when you look at Jupiter, and you're going to see the Galilean moons are the four major ones, but I think there's about 66 now. Talked about that. But Saturn will be so close to Jupiter at that point that as you're looking at that circle of moons, Saturn will appear in that. Some call it the Bethlehem star. Again, it hasn't happened since 1229 AD. So that's a unique event in itself. So we're watching it, guys. I appreciate you all coming. I'm going to kill the feed. We've been here, like I said, over 3 hours, and I'm going to keep a very close eye on this the rest of the day. All of you guys be safe. I know that a lot of you are suffering from this. I've seen it in the comments. Stay out of direct sunlight if it's bothering you that bad, and wear extra sunglasses today because you got multiple sunspots making the sun brighter, and we have an incoming energetic cloud of particles. But we're watching it, guys. You watch it. Let me very quickly look and see if we have any questions. You guys are all welcome. Thank you, 9 Fathoms. But just watch for updates. I'll be back just as soon as this thing starts to change. I hope that a lot of people got to meet each other, but I hope that you kind of figured out what I do when I watch them so that maybe you can use the tools and spread that information. But again, it's a heads up, guys. Be safe.